Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session that we have here. My name is Ruben. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Singapore FinTech Association. And I'd like to thank all my audience today for joining us, and especially so if you are our members, more importantly, to what we have today is that we are, as SFA, is we we are not in today, we are collaborating with Enterprise Singapore, or some of you may know as ESG. Enterprise Singapore, for those who are not so familiar, which you shouldn't be, by the way, but that said, Enterprise Singapore is a state board under Ministry of Trade and Industry, and they are the body that has been heavily supporting Singapore enterprise, SMEs especially, or MSMEs, to grow your business, whether it's in Singapore or especially also to overseas. And a lot of times you will be very familiar with them because they have always come up with many grant structure to support your growth, especially when it comes to money. You see, and more importantly, guys, they don't just say they help; they put the money where the mouth is. So I think this is something that we really want to give thanks and really appreciate our government agency for supporting this. And at SFA, we have collaborated with Enterprise Singapore to do this session because we have received a lot of feedback that people are asking, oh guys, I hear so many different grants. I heard that there's grant to help me get my ISO standards. I hear that there's grant to help me go overseas through market release. I hear there's grant called Enterprise Debit to help me to digitalize, and there are so many of these questions that actually at Enterprise Singapore, they have also been doing a lot of outreach effort to help enterprises understand how to leverage on all these efforts and campaigns that they have set up for you. So I think today is one of those opportune moments that we have them on board with us, and they will be in the right position to share more with you. So listen in, and more importantly, prepare your questions so that towards the end, if there's any, feel free to put it out there. I'm happy to invite them to take them. And more importantly, even after the session, if some of the questions are not answered, let us know, and we'll be happy to then happy to continue this conversation with them, because know that, guys, they are here to support you and help you grow your business. All right, and without further ado, let me hand it over to Iman, our good friend from Enterprise Singapore.
Hey, thank you, Ruben. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Iman. I'm from the Infocom and Media team within Enterprise Singapore. And essentially, the team, together with me, looks at supporting our technology enterprises grow and scale by developing capabilities and helping them to internationalize and to capture new markets. Just give me a second. Let me just get my presentation up and running.
We can see it.
Brilliant. So my sharing today is just want to take the opportunity to run through some of the programs, efforts, schemes that Enterprise Singapore has, and we are very thankful for the opportunity given by the Singapore FinTech Association as a platform for us to do this sharing. So just a bit more about Enterprise Singapore. I think Ruben has shared a bit already. We're essentially a government agency under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, formed in 2018. It's essentially a merger between two government agencies back then known as Spring Singapore as well as International Enterprise Singapore. And our mandate is to help local enterprises build capabilities and capture new opportunities so that they can be globally competitive. It is a collective effort to grow Singapore's economy, and we work very closely with EDB Singapore, whom many of you would know is entrusted to bring foreign direct investments in Singapore. JDC as another that looks at some of the critical economic infrastructure that we have. And last but not least, A-Star to foster research and development. So it's essentially our mission is to essentially grow stronger enterprises so that we can help create good jobs for Singaporeans. And our vision is to make local enterprises in Singapore globally competitive, right? How we do this, we focus on 4 key efforts. We focus on firstly driving enterprise transformation and growth, strengthening strengthening our position as a global node for innovation. Trade is a very key emphasis for us, so developing Singapore into a global trading hub is a key agenda. And last but not least, build trust. And that's where I have my colleague Hong Ming, who would later on share in greater detail in terms of how companies can leverage on standards to access new markets, essentially leveraging on trust that through the attainment of certain marks. But I'll leave that to Hong to share further later on. We have a global network to help companies access new markets, and this could be access to new technologies, new customers, new resources, right? And for the tech industry, I think this is especially critical, especially given the tightness around labor that we have in Singapore. And to remain competitive, our companies need to be able to access new talents overseas, and and as well as in addition to new markets. So through our global network of 36 offices directly, we champion this, but we also work through partners, and that's where we have more than 15 global innovation alliances, partnerships that we have in specific jurisdictions, and we're constantly looking to build more of such, right? The intent here essentially is to identify innovation hubs through which Singapore companies can identify new partners to innovate and as well in addition to market access. And last but not least, we have at Singapore Enterprise Centers with the Singapore Chamber of Commerce, and that's where I guess for China there's a special emphasis in terms of trying to funnel interest by Singapore companies into these markets. How we support enterprises, it takes on a multiple fold approach, right? As I mentioned earlier, we take on an enterprise-centric approach in supporting companies to develop capabilities, to help them internationalize. And last but not least, for many SMEs and startups, access financing and partnerships. So breaking down, I'll go into further detail some of the schemes and products that we have, but essentially put, these are enterprise-centric efforts towards supporting your development, a Singapore company's developmental needs, right? First and foremost, from the capability development side, we know that productivity is one of the key issues that we want to help Singapore companies, especially during the period of COVID. The Productivity Solutions Grant has been helpful in supporting companies to digitalize their own internal processes. Through the grant itself, we support up to 70% with a grant cap of $30,000 a year, looking at digital solutions that Singapore companies can adopt. And even as a tech company, as you focus on your product, the digitalization of your internal operations is sometimes a gap. So that's where the Productivity Solutions Grants can help. And I'm not surprised if some of you are also existing vendors for the Productivity Solution Grants in helping non-tech enterprises digitalize their internal processes. We do have a criteria, or in terms of an eligibility criteria, essentially. So companies need to show a minimum of 30% local shareholding. They need to have no more than 200 workers or less than $100 million turnover. And that for the solutions that you want to adopt, they must not be existing users of the solution. So the philosophy here is that we want to incentivize you, to encourage you to adopt digital solutions. But if you're already using these solutions, or you've already been supported in one category, then the following year you should not be applying for the same product again, even though you have a 30K grant cap, right? Because I think the moral hazard that we want to avoid is we want to incentivize to adopt, but not continually sustain your subscription to the solution. Yeah. So that's the Productivity Solutions Grants. Comparing, what I have now is actually the Enterprise Development Grant, and the scope of this grant is much wider in nature, beyond just digitalization of internal processes. We look at developing core capabilities. We look at enabling innovation and productivity, and last but not least, looking at market access, right? So some of the areas of support across the three buckets are listed here. We support companies in terms of their brand development strategy, their financial management capabilities, human capital development costs, and most of these under the core capability side essentially refer to third-party costs that will need to qualify. And then for the consultants that support you on some of these core capability development efforts, they will need to be certified by us. they need to have a what we call recognized management consultant certificate, which is an accreditation to make sure that they are, and in this accreditation process is critical because we want to make sure that enterprises engage qualified consultants in helping them to do their consultancy projects, as opposed to a fly-by-night consultant who's not certified by us. So that's on the core capability side. In terms of innovation and productivity, I think most of the companies here can benefit from bucket number 3, which is essentially product development. We want to encourage companies to innovate and to build new products or build upon their existing products as a means of expanding their revenue stream. So the product development effort on our end could look at supporting existing salaries of, tech staff, right? And I would say in this, we support salaries of Singaporeans, or Singapore citizens, or Singapore PRs to incentivize companies to train our local talent to suit their needs. On the last bucket, in terms of market access, we support companies in trying to develop pilot projects, third-party costs with regards to due diligence for M&A activities, for example. And last but not least, standards adoption. And that's where Hong Ming, my colleague, later on will go slightly in depth on how companies can benefit from standards. There are eligibility criteria. And I think the key here is that we want to support local enterprises. So you need to be registered with ACRA, obviously, and you need to have minimally 30% local shareholding, right? The scope of the enterprise development grant, there's technically no cap. So some companies tend to think that, PSG, there's a cap of 30K. Is there a cap for enterprise development grant? The answer is no. The question revolves around what are the qualified activities, because the scope of EDG is much broader. And more fundamentally, you need to be able to show that you are in a financially viable position to undertake the project, because the project is on reimbursement basis, right? You will be required to show that you have the existing resources, and that the grant is not to, it's meant to support, but support from the perspective of incentivizing companies to do more, as opposed to subsidizing cost of development. Yeah. The last bucket is mainly to support internationalization efforts, and that's where we have our Market Readiness Assistance Grant, or in short we call it MRE. The MRE has a funding cap of about $100,000 per company per new market, and then many companies tend to confuse this. What we're essentially saying is that every company has a kind of funding allocation of 100K as they go into Malaysia, as they go into India, the US. Of course, the value of the 100K might bring you a longer distance in certain markets. In other markets, it may not bring you as far. But essentially, it's a 100K cap, essentially for you to explore new markets. How we define new markets is that these are markets where you have not earned more than $100,000 Singapore dollars in revenue over in any of the 3 preceding years. So that's defined as the new market. But even within the 100K itself, there are caps to the category of activities that we support. So the first area of support is in terms of overseas market promotion. And these are activities where companies can participate. We will support and offset some of the costs in terms of their participation into physical as well as virtual trade shows. And these are essentially trade shows which are not part of a wider LEAD program. So just to give some perspective, the LEAD program is one in which we partner with the trade association and chambers. So we actually have one. So we actually support SFA on some of their international missions and trade fairs, and there's a separate pot of funding available for that, which means that you don't eat into your Market Readiness Assistance grants cap if you participate in a trade show where we are supporting SFA in, for example. So that's the one key benefit of being a member of SFA and participating in some of the events that they are running. Yeah, just to do a bit of marketing for SFE there.
I cannot stop smiling. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So that's a separate part of funding. This refers to standalone events in which maybe you're the only participant. So these independent events, you can leverage this 20K cost, 20K cap of funding allocation to support your participation fees, as well as any additional ancillary marketing fees, as part of the what we call overseas marketing promotion program. The next bucket is the overseas business development as an area of support, where we actually support you in hiring, for example. So there are two approaches, right? Companies may decide that they want to put boots on the ground. And that's where we have our overseas marketing presence program, where we can support salaries of BD staff, one BD staff, and rental up to a maximum of 50,000. Right? So that's one. So for example, if you're a company that wants to set up a presence in say India, right? Let's say Bangalore for reference, we can actually support you in hiring your local BD manager for no more than 12 months. So 12 months is the cap, and 12 months also applies for rental as well, as long as you don't burst the 50,000 funding limit. Right? There are instances where companies actually want to do a first level market sensing, and they might not want to put boots on the ground. So that's where the business matching and in-market business development activities can be supported, where you hire a third-party consultant, and we so-called use part of that $50,000 to support by offsetting the costs of hiring these consultants. And their role would typically be in terms of garnering leads for you, or open doors to certain partners, for example. So that's under overseas business development, and it works for companies that want to put boots on the ground, or companies that kind of want a light touch to do a first level sensing of the market, right? And last but not least is the overseas setup, where we support companies in doing market entry. We support third-party costs incurred by companies as they do things like market entry, company registration, for the free trade agreements, FTAs, in short. There are companies that kind of focus on the business of importing and exporting. So especially tech companies that have a hardware kind of ancillary business, they can benefit from this FTA consultancy, and we can actually cover those costs as well. So as I mentioned earlier, the caps apply, but we support up to 70% of those costs, right? So meaning to say, if the cost of, for example, your overseas market promotion is about 30,000, 70% of that is 21, we will support up to 20, right? Similar calculation applies for the rest, for PSG as well. So that's typically how we qualify our support. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. The bulk of the schemes that we mentioned earlier, they revolve mainly around supporting you on your activities, your business activities, right? But we also understand that for businesses that want to scale and grow, the need for talent is critical, right? And what we want to help enterprises in Singapore is by supporting some of the talent development efforts or interest by companies. Because essentially, as you scale abroad, as you open up a presence overseas, one intent is to look at creating good jobs for Singaporeans overseas. And we understand that it is definitely not an easy process. In fact, in certain instances, as you bring in a fresh graduate, he or she would probably need to be acclimatized to the company's business, have a deep understanding of your business, for example, and in order to be able to support you and lead your overseas presence, right? And that's where This effort on the Global Ready Talent Program supports companies in some of the talent development plans for internationalization. What the key benefit from this is that Singapore enterprises will be able to we will support Singapore enterprises in offering internships and management associate programs. Primarily, this will be in the form of local and overseas internships where we support some of the costs and stipend, for example, for the local and overseas interns, and salaries for the management associates through the management associate program. So again, a key fundamental here is that, you know, as you hire talent, these talent, how do I put it? The core intent is to build this talent pool. So companies that are selected for this program would ideally have a strong internal HR practice already, right? And are able to commit over the long term for leadership and talent development. So if you're a tech SME that's keen to scale and you have strong human resource practices, you are one candidate that we would be keen to engage to partner for this program. This is our double tax deduction for internationalization effort. Obviously, this applies for companies that are already profitable. So for many startups, just bear with me, but essentially what this program does is that it through your various internationalization efforts, you can actually make a 200% tax deductible on the various activities such as market preparation, market exploration, market promotion, and market presence, right? Don't have to worry about the key details. I should have mentioned earlier on that we'll be happy to share this with SFA for circulation to all the participants. But fundamentally put, to cut your taxable income, this is an effective strategy, especially for companies that are already churning profits and are scaling up on the internationalization front. I think to a certain extent, this program is already, I mean, the tax deductible on international activities is automatic, but beyond a certain cap, companies are urged, we will urge companies to write into us, especially if you anticipate a very large internationalization spending in your key activities for the year. Yeah. One of the last few programs that we have is to support companies to access financing. So a major bucket for the financing program that we have is the enterprise financing scheme. And we support various areas such as working capital loans, for startups, venture debt loan, for companies that have a hardware, physical, import, export business to complement your software business. The trade loans could be very helpful in supporting your so-called hardware business, right, across borders. And last but not least, supporting you on mergers and acquisitions, right? For all these programs, we work with our partner financing institutions. So the big three guys, DBS, OCBC, UOB are already part of the program. But beyond that, we also work with a slew of other banks. And this includes, for example, Standard Chartered Bank, I think Bank of China as well. So we do have a long list of financial institutions that we partner, and companies need not apply directly. They don't need to come directly to Enterprise Singapore, but they can approach the banks, and the banks will utilize this program to unlock that support directly to you. Yeah. So beyond supporting enterprises, a special effort goes to supporting startups, because we want to grow the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem in Singapore. To do so, it is not just one effort by Enterprise Singapore. We actually work with many partners, right? Across government, and that includes the Singapore FinTech Association as well, to spur the pool of fintech startups that we have in Singapore, right? it's not just about growing them here, but also to let them access innovation, let them access talent, let them access resources. And that's where we had the Global Innovation Alliance, which I mentioned earlier, to be launched and landing pads actually for Singapore tech enterprises and Singapore tech startups. Through the Startup Singapore ecosystem, we have several programs. Some might apply directly to startups. So for example, the Startup Founder, the Startup Equity program, Startup SG Tech apply directly to enterprises or startups, but some of the other programs such as the Startup SG Accelerator and Startup SG Investor, their role is primarily to catalyze the ecosystem to ensure that there are frontier emerging technology. I mean, there are accelerators and investors that are looking at frontier emerging technologies to accelerate, again, the pool and build a new talent pool of startups that are looking into frontier emerging technologies, which are one of which would include deep technology as a category. So I mentioned earlier in terms of Startup SG, there's a slew of programs. And essentially, our startup categorization is that a Singapore enterprise would need to be less than 10 years old to be qualified as a startup. The same 30% local shareholding rules apply for you to participate in these programs. And again, the intent here is essentially to catalyze the growth of startups through partners. Yeah. One key thing I forgot to mention earlier is a Startup SG network. It is essentially a marketplace where we aggregate startups, VCs, accelerators. And the idea of building this portal is so that companies or startups have access to to investors with whom they can approach. The idea is to make discovery easier. So in fact, if you're a startup, we actually urge you to register to the online portal to put yourself out there, essentially. And therein there are direct contacts to VCs, to accelerators, some of whom we run programs with. So we do urge you, if you're not on the network, please build your profile there, register and build a profile there. If you're already there, try to look through and try to see how you can maximize the access to some of these players to see how they can support your growth. So it's an ecosystem effort rather than just one led by Enterprise Singapore. Yeah. So essentially, I mentioned this earlier. We do have the Global Innovation Alliance to supplement efforts in growing startups, and these are launch and landing pads that Singapore companies can leverage on. Together with some of these partners in each location, we run programs where we provide market immersion activities so that startups get a better lay of the land and are able to find partners, customers, for them to scale and enter the new market. So we do urge you, if you haven't signed up, do participate. Do sign up in the open Startup SG network. There are regular emails talking about the various programs and activities that we run, and then it will be a good discovery platform for you to learn more. So what are some of these activities that we run in Singapore or even globally through our Global Innovation Alliance. Sorry. So that's enough with my part. I think we're happy to take questions at the later part of this session. But I'll just hand over the time to my colleague Hong Ming to talk about how standards can be an enabler for fintechs in Singapore to grow your business. Hong Ming, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Iman. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, sorry.
No
I think you should be able to do it on your side now.
Yeah. So, can you see?
Can I see?
Screen?
Yeah,
okay,
I can see.
That's great. So, let's see. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hong Ming from Policy and Promotion Division in Enterprise Singapore. So our work at PBD is to promote local and international standards that can help companies access overseas market. So today, I'm sharing about using standards as an enabler for fintech companies to grow your business. And before we talk about specific standards suitable for fintech, I want to touch briefly on standards in general. So prior to joining PPD, I was not very familiar with standards. But now, after through the work, I come to realize standards actually play a very important role in our everyday lives. So I want to share a very short video about standards to let you see how it relates to all of us. Let me check. Okay.
It's time to get up. Do you know the ISO International Time Standard is UTC? Just 15 more minutes. Note to self, wash socks. You know those care label and symbols we see on clothes? Yep, that's an ISO standard too. While we wait, did you know there's an ISO committee brewing coffee standards? They have served 24 to date. Get it? Oh, and there's an ISO committee on dentistry. The least scary ones are standards for toothbrushes, toothpaste, and dental floss. And there's an ISO cosmetics committee where 62 countries develop standards for everything from sunscreen to shampoo. Okay, don't laugh, but there are standards for doors. Did you know that NASA consulted an ISO standard for elevator acceleration when they made the capsule that rescued the 33 Chilean miners in 2010? Oh, I'm gonna be late. You know who's never late? The Secretariat of the Clocks and Watches Committee, which, surprise, surprise, is held by the Swiss. Gotta pedal as fast as I can. Thankfully, there's a whole series of standards making sure bicycles are safe. Now wheels, go faster! Talking about wheels, this one will run you over. ISO experts have developed nearly 800 standards for road vehicles. Just got sprayed. If only we all used the new water footprint standard to avoid wasting water. Ooh, shaky bridge. If you're testing the vibration of road, rail, and pedestrian bridges, don't forget to use ISO standards. All this is possible thanks to the thousands of experts that volunteer their time and effort to make standards. We are the ISO family. Happy World Standards Day.
So there are really a lot of standards for everything. Okay, next. Oops. So this is a very quick introduction to standards and conformers. Standards are their industry best practices that give guidance in areas like design, performance of materials and products, processes, and so on. They ensure products and companies' products and services meet industry or international practices and systems. Adoption of standards is voluntary unless standards are used in technical regulations. That's when standards become mandatory. Conformance is the process where to verify that products, services, or companies, they meet the standards they claim to. So this verification is done by conformance assessment bodies, or what we know as CABs. And there are three types of CABs: the testing and calibration labs, certification bodies, and inspection bodies, or TIC for short. So earlier, Iman shared that Enterprise Singapore's aim is to grow stronger enterprises through these 4 key efforts. I want to focus on the portion on building trust in Singapore products and services. This is where Enterprise Singapore plays a couple of roles in standards and conformance. So Enterprise Singapore, they oversees the Singapore Standards Council, which is, or rather SSC, which is the Singapore's national standards body. SSC works with the industry to develop local standards and align to international standards. And Enterprise Singapore also oversees the National Accreditation Council, SAC, which is the national accreditation body. So SAC runs the Singapore Accreditation Program that accredits the Singapore Conformity assessment bodies. And here's an overview of our standards and conformance infrastructure that aims to build trust in Singapore's products and services. This is the value chain. This is the whole value chain for standards and conformance in Singapore. and Enterprise Singapore plays a part in each stage. So on the left, you see Singapore Standards Council develop and review standards to support companies' growth. Then next, we raise awareness and encourage adoption of the standards among the industry. We also support local testing, inspection, and certification players, TIC players, to build capabilities to meet the needs of our local industry. And then lastly, the Singapore Accreditation Council ensures the competence and impartiality of these TIC players through the accreditation program. So how does standards and conformers specifically benefit fintech? There are three ways: raising qualities of products and services, build trust in your products and services, and meet industry requirements. I'll share more details in the next few slides. So first, standards and conformers, they can raise quality of products and services. Standards adoption like ISO 27001 can strengthen a fintech's internal process and information security management system. So this also contributes to the seamless deployment of fintech solutions. For example, recognizing the importance of having a robust information security system, Stacks, or previously known as Stacks, a fintech firm focusing on environmental, social, and governance fintech, adopted ISO 27001 for its beta DLT platform. This ensures the platform has information security processes in place that meet the highest international standards, thereby ensuring the security and quality of its service. And next, standards and conformers can build trust in products and services. Standards are an universal language that assure customers, regulators, stakeholders that fintech solutions, they are of quality, and companies are committed to upholding high standards. Example here is QPay Private Limited, a fintech firm that focus on digital payment services. QPay was awarded ISO 27001 and ISO 27701 PIMS, that means Privacy Information Management System, for creating an integrated approach in securing the information systems and also protecting data privacy. This adoption of the standards demonstrates QPay's increased vigilance and resilience against cyber threats and instills greater trust and confidence in QPay's products and services. Then next, standards and conformance help meet industry requirements. As you may know, many international companies, they only work with trusted business partners, and certification to industry standards is a way to demonstrate to potential clients that your business has the competency to meet their needs. Players in Southeast Asia banking industry are increasingly recognizing the importance of international standards. For example, CIMB and Siam Commercial Bank, they are certified to ISO 27001. Regulators like OJK, Indonesia's Financial Securities Authority, are also increasingly demanding digital frameworks to be backed by international standards like ISO 27001. So after all this, so where can you start? So data protection and cybersecurity, they are ongoing challenges for fintech companies. They are targets for cyber attacks because of the volume and sensitivity of the data that's being processed. So in this situation, standards can help with implementing data protection or cybersecurity frameworks to minimize the risk of cyber threats. For example, ISO 27001, it uses a risk-based controls framework to protect information and data. So the framework looks at the risk a fintech company has and then suggests appropriate measures to address the risk. This can help a fintech demonstrate adequate security maturity to a prospective client or partner. So here are some information and data security standards that are more prevalent in the fintech industry. First one is ISO 27001, is the leading international standard for information security. Since many financial service organizations, especially banks, they manage their own data, ISO 27001 can help demonstrate that they have the capability to identify and mitigate potential cyber risks. Then next is ISO 27701. This is a data privacy extension to ISO 27001. This international standard, they help organizations implement a privacy information management system to mitigate data privacy risks. Data Protection Trust Mark, DPTM, I'm sure some of you are familiar, is a local certification for organizations to demonstrate accountable data protection practices. It's developed based on Singapore's Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, and incorporates elements of international best practices. And the last one is Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI-DSS. This is an information security standard for financial services that handle credit card information. It's a mandatory standard required by the card brands. So takeaways, I think there's quite a bit of information. And so for my section, here are 3 takeaways for everyone. In today's fintech and the customers, they operate cross borders. So fintechs that has a solid grasp of the laws, regulations, and standards applicable to their business. They not only avoid the pitfalls that their peers face, but also they also gain a competitive advantage. Standards compliance, they not only make fintechs more secure within, but also enable them to be seen by potential commercial partners as sufficiently secure to work with. They can help your company to establish customer trust and expand to new regulated markets, like to attract larger customers. But each business is different, so there is no cookie cutter template to follow when it comes to compliance. It depends on which market your business operates, who do you do business with, and what data do you collect from your end users. So if you are considering adopting standards for your company, I want to inform you that there's support through Enterprise Development Grant and Double Tax Deduction for Internationalization, DTTI, which were both mentioned by Iman just now. For more details on them, please go to our website at enterprise.gov.sg. And SFA, Singapore Fintech Association, also has their fintech certification program that distinguishes fintech companies from others in the marketplace. To learn more about this program, please go to SFA's website at singaporefintech.org. And this is my last slide. So for more information and advice, please go to Startup Portal, just now Iman mentioned, and Enterprise Singapore's website. So you can see the URL here, and we'll share the slide with you. And if you prefer to call, the info line number is listed here. And if you prefer to reach out to the SME centers, their contact details can be found on Enterprise Singapore's website. So that's all for me, and I hope my sharing has been helpful for everyone. Thank you for your time, and let me hand back to Ruben.
Yep. Thank you so much. Thanks, Iman. Thanks, Hongming. Now, ladies and gentlemen, after this sharing today, I hope it really gives you a much more better understanding of what ESG Enterprise Singapore in this case is really doing to provide support for all of you. As you can see, it really covers very wide spectrum, from deepening your local expertise, your own company functional expertise, all the way to even going overseas and even supporting you in growing. And bearing in mind, it's not just only these capability that's supporting you. Even when it comes to standards, it's really coming up with support to help you to make sure that you're aligned with the international recognition. And on top of all that, they also have overseas office reps where they are there on the ground, working tirelessly to help you to establish network as well. So I just want to call out to let everyone have a better understanding. Even for us, when we plan our mission trip, we are also working closely with the Enterprise Singapore overseas office where where the team there help us with all the right connections and also help us to understand the lay of the land. So guys, I think at this moment, if you could just join me around applause. I know it's virtual, but I just want to recognize the efforts from our strong civil servants who are in Enterprise Singapore, not just only from Iman and from Homing, but also to the rest of the team who are present with us today. Now, right now, I think I just want to go straight into the Q&A. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any questions, this is the best time to ask. You don't have to call hotline. You don't have to wait for someone to pick up your call. This is the chance right now. You just type it in and we'll have them answer on your behalf. And that's it. We do have one question there. And let me just read out for everyone's benefit. Can an SME apply for more than one grant? Example, have applied successfully for EDG last year and plan to apply for EDG this year or next. Or maybe if I were to let me add on to that, is that what if it can they apply all the grants they talked about earlier? So from PSG to EDG to MRA and even to standards, can one company avail for all these grants?
So should I take that? Yeah, can. Thank you for the question, right? So simply put, you can apply for more than one grant. So for example, specific to the question, yes, if you successfully applied for the enterprise development grant, you can apply for the same grant but on condition that this is a new capability that you're developing, right? So for example, if we've supported you on, say, standards, right? So for example, ISO 27001, and because you wanna go out to market, right? But then you have another standard that's known as SOC, right? SOC 2, SOC 1, SOC 2. Then actually from a capability development perspective, you already have those capabilities. So then if you already supported you on EDG via enterprise development grant on ISO 27001, then we probably will not support you on SOC 2, right? Because then we think the delta in terms of new capabilities is very minimal. Similarly, when we supported you on new products and capability, new product development, and if you want to tap on enterprise development grant again to support you on your product development journey, it is possible. But then we are constantly looking for what is the new delta that's being created, and it should not be incremental. So I just want to stress that it is possible, but we obviously will look through the proposal to determine what's the new delta that is being created, what are the new capabilities that are being developed by the company as a result of the enterprise development grant application. When it comes to MRAs and PSG, even as you apply for EDG, you can also apply for MRA and PSG, right? But fundamentally, one key assessment that we have is that you have the financial viability to do so, especially for young startup. I think because with these grants, there are deliverables that we need to mutually agree on. And I mentioned earlier that the grants are based on reimbursements, right? So we don't encourage companies to apply for too many grants because then we wonder it will have impact on cash flow, especially if you are unable to meet the deliverables, right? And as such, will result in either delay of claims or may not get the full claim, for example. Then we try to limit. We won't try to structurally limit the number of grants that you can apply for, but look at which is more critical. Do an assessment of what is most critical, and then support those critical activities first. So just to answer both the anonymous question by the anonymous questioner as well as Ruben, you can apply for a grant again. We can support multiple grants through the different programs, but fundamentally, I think we just want to make sure that as a company, as you apply, you have the financial wherewithal as well as the absorptive capacity to take on all these programs, and that the grants shouldn't be to your detriment, essentially.
Thanks, Iman. Thanks for the answer. Right, is there, mindful of time, guys, we are actually kind of overshot, but is there any other last question that you have for our friends from Enterprise Singapore? And if you do not have any right now for Ra, that's okay. You know how to reach out to them. And if not, you can also then drop us the email and then we're happy to forward those to for them to respond to you as well. Right, and I guess we do not have any moment now. Maybe there's just one. Let me take this chance again, once again, to thank Enterprise Singapore, Iman and Ho Ming to take this time off to join us for today. So guys, they are here to support us. They are here to support you to make sure that you succeed, not just only in Singapore, but also overseas. So do take this chance. And the only way for this engagement, this relationship to grow and prosper is that, you know, make it a two-way channel. So read out about this grant, take part in the activities, and in exchange that help you and support you. And then as you tap on them more and then they support you more, it really would give you the edge, not just only in Singapore, but also overseas. And so that as you grow, our economy will grow with you, our country will prosper with you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much once again. Thank you for taking time off. My name is Ruben, and we hope to see you in our next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to our SFA and Ruben, you know, thank you for the opportunity.
And you, Ruben.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.